when you hear these things on a good sound system, and you can hear things with clarity and depth and width and space, it really is like the music becomes this kind of living, breathing entity in the room. Taking away all the visuals and all the distractions, it focuses your mind, and it can become a very intense experience. It can be kind of quite overwhelming at times. And this experience is just a way of it's stripping everything back, and you just experience the music as your brain is prepared to experience it that day, with nothing else to kind of colour it, basically. So my name is Ben Gomori. I run Pitchblack Playback, which is an event where people come and listen to albums and mixtapes in the dark on big sound systems. I'm from London. I'm also a DJ and producer. I can only speak from a personal level, I guess, but for me it's a thing. It's my reason, you know, my purpose, I think, on this planet is to share music with people and help spread music around and introduce people to it. That's why I feel I've been put here. And for me, and I'm sure for many other people, music has the power to elevate me when I'm having a hard time. It's something that I can rely on to help change my mood or make me feel better, or just transform my day sometimes. And it's just such a primal need that most of us have to come together and commune in some way. Some people have religion, some people have football, a lot of us have music, and for me it's basically my religion and my way of connecting with other people. Deep listening is a term that it's kind of come up a bit parallel to things like slow food and slow travel, and for me it just means listening to something without distraction. So not multitasking, not listening while reading or working or whatever. It's a dedicated experience where you're just giving yourself completely to the music and letting whatever thoughts come from that into your mind. So for me, I always describe our events as a little bit like musical meditation. So it's about the intention and the setting as well, I guess. So I used to be a music journalist, and I was invited to a premiere of an album, a press premiere, so like a preview before the release of the album that Ninja Tune put on in a cinema not far from here in Soho. And it was to invite the press to hear a new Amon Tobin album. And it was this lovely dedicated listening session in a cinema with some visuals on the screen. And I'd never been in that environment before, where everyone understood that you just had to be quiet and just listen to the album, and that was the activity. No talking, no discussion, whatever. And I came out of that experience just really, I felt it was quite transformative, hearing music on a great sound system like that coming at me from sort of all angles, and just having that hour in my day just purely for that, and to actually experience an album for the first time like that with no distractions, just in such a pure way. So I then had the idea of bringing that pre-release press preview experience to the public, to something like a small group of super fans or something could experience it before the album came out. And I was explaining it to some friends, trying to get them interested in the concept, and they didn't really get it, and they didn't understand why anyone would pay money for such a thing. But one of my friends said, "Are you going to do it in the dark or something?" And then that was the light bulb moment where I was like, yeah, that's the hook, basically. And then I later found out he said that because he'd been to see a play by Samuel Beckett called Endgame, and the first act is held in complete darkness. So that was fresh in his mind, and yeah, it was just the combination of those two things, basically. From my own personal experience, I've been very pleasantly surprised about how powerful and transformative it can be. It sounds like a very simple idea, and to some people it sounds like a gimmick or something, but I've had the experience where I've done something like Air's album Moon Safari, which I grew up with and know intimately and have listened to many, many times. And it was kind of like hearing it again for the first time, because it's not just about hearing it in the dark. We're also putting a lot of attention and care into trying to find spaces with good sound systems, good acoustics, always trying to find the best option that we can provide or get access to in any given city. And when you hear these things on a good sound system, and you can hear things with clarity and depth and width and space, it really is like the music becomes this kind of living, breathing entity in the room. So it's not just about the dark, because you can listen to music on headphones in the dark at home and you will have a great experience, but it's completely different. And some people don't understand that. They don't understand that if they've never been, that it's a very different situation. So yeah, there's that element of it, and just taking away all the visuals and all the distractions, it focuses your mind and it can become a very intense experience. It can be kind of quite overwhelming at times, and it just, yeah, it means that there's no other kind of image in your mind being put there, or you're not having to deal with anything else. Like, you know, if you go to a gig, you're often dealing with people talking around you or bumping into you or things like that. And this experience is just a way of, it's stripping everything back, and you just experience the music as your brain is prepared to experience it that day, with nothing else to kind of colour it, basically. One of the most common bits of feedback we get about listening to it in these environments, listening to albums in these distraction-free, dark, loud environments, is that people pick up details in records that they've heard many, many times before. And we just had the experience when we did the Bends in Brighton. Someone came up to me and said the same thing. They said, I've heard it hundreds of times before. I noticed new details felt like I'd never heard. And I've had that experience too. So it can be crazy, all these things that you've missed over the years, even in records that you think you know inside out. First, we've got to find the right venue. So it's got to be somewhere that has great sound, comfortable seating, and can be made to be as dark as possible. We also give everyone, I should get one, actually, eye masks, 1 second. Ooh. Because each venue is different and has emergency exit lighting, which means the room isn't completely dark, we always have these eye masks which everyone is given as they come in and gets to keep, and it just completely puts you in darkness in whichever room you're in. So that's another big logistical situation we have to deal with. Getting these produced and sent to all our venues around the world can get quite complicated. We always have to make sure we have permission from the artist or record label to play these albums and to charge for tickets for them. We're also, very busy, obviously marketing the events, trying to do as much on social media as possible, making sure that we are finding ways to explain our concept, because obviously there's nothing really to show of the event while it's happening. So we have to find clever ways to relay that experience and the emotions that people feel in our events. So we're trying to do more now, getting reactions from people at the events, how they experienced it and how it made them feel, because that's the best way of making other people understand why they should come and give it a try. The criteria for a Pitchblack Playback album are that it needs to be an album that is acclaimed within its genre. It needs to be something that will benefit from the setting of listening to it in the dark. So I think there's certain albums which are just sort of a bit all too surface level, or maybe just too constantly intense, that won't really work. It needs to have some contrast and some dynamics, and the stuff that works best, it's either things that have very interesting production, layers of production, interesting details, like I say, that you might not have noticed before unless you listen to it in this environment. Things with a good sense of spaciousness, so things with big reverb, and yeah, just a sense of being in a sort of physical space. Things that are based around performance, natural performance, so it could also be about the subtleties of the human voice or instrument playing, something very detailed. So it can be many things, and we do all different kinds of genres. It can be any era as well, but it just needs to be something where you're going to get more out of the experience, more out of the album by listening to it in this setting. And not every album works that way, even if it's an album I like. It also needs to be something that, yeah, has some cultural cachet. The older albums we do, the ones that tend to perform best, are ones that have what I would call like a trickle down to the younger generations and to younger artists, and it's still music that is influencing younger generations today, because some of the legacy artists, they have a kind of limited appeal amongst younger audiences, and the best crossover, cross-section is, yeah, when it's someone who continues to be influential to this day. So we've grown from just doing events in London to doing them all around the world. We've had over 50,000 people come to our events now in the UK, Europe, America, Central America, South America, Asia and Australasia, and nothing in Africa yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. And the concept has really taken hold in recent years, I think particularly since the pandemic. There's been a growing trend for alternative spaces and experiences which help people to disconnect from devices and just the noise of the outside world. So there's been a big growth in the popularity of listening bars. There's sort of Japanese style listening bar which has started to spread all across the world, which is usually based around hi-fi and vinyl and cocktails, things like that. And yeah, I see more and more audio experiences that are solely based around listening. And I think it was happening anyway. I'm sure a few people have copied us, but I think we're just part of a wider trend. There were people doing album listening sessions before us. We didn't invent the concept. We also didn't invent the concept of listening to music in the dark. I've seen there have been live performances in the dark for years, and it was just, we united the two. And also I've worked really hard on trying to make the premiere experience a big part of what we do. So being able to hear records before they come out, which, like I explained, was the initial concept. That's a really key part of what we do. And in the past couple of years, we've premiered albums across the world by the likes of MGMT, Christine and the Queens, Flume, John Hopkins, lots of artists. So for me, that's one of the most exciting things that we can offer. We recently partnered with Pathé Cinemas in the Netherlands, which was the kind of second time I'd say we've partnered with a chain of cinemas to expand more rapidly. And we're now in our second season with them, which is going well. So looking to do more of that, I think, eventually, and eventually also franchise out the concept so that I can hand it over to people in local markets, and I don't have to be as hands-on with programming things in different countries, because it's starting to get to the point where it's too much for me to handle on top of the other things that I do. So I'd say that's the main things. And then, yeah, always just partnering with different artists. We had our biggest, most high-profile campaign in December, where we partnered with The Cure to promote their just released album, Songs of a Lost World, at multiple venues all across the world. And that was really satisfying, because it was one of my favorite records of last year, and was amazing to get their weight behind the concept and help to spread it to even more people. So yeah, we'll be doing lots more. We have another big artist anniversary coming in May, which is going to be in probably 15 or so cities across the world, and where we'll also be premiering bonus content that hasn't been heard before. I think the most important thing when it comes to empathy is listening to people, listening to how they feel and what their experience is, and actually not just listening but hearing it, taking it on board, taking the time to let people say their piece without interrupting or without giving your opinion, and just absorbing it. So in that way, it's really a perfect parallel to what we do, because it's about giving artists the space to be really heard and have their work heard. And particularly with the premiere events, it's like, you know, I want you to hear this record for the first time in the most unadulterated, pure fashion. And that's why artists really like partnering with us, because they know we're going to give people the best possible experience for hearing that record for the first time. So I would like to think that in that way it helps us to build empathy with people, and also lots of people come on their own to Pitchblack Playback, and quite often we'll find that they start talking to other people. People have said they've met people at our events. So I think just being in a room together with people who appreciate the same things as you do, and it's a bit even more refined than being at a gig, because like I said, I've had countless experiences at a gig paying a load of money to see an artist that I absolutely love, only for there to be some very annoying people next to me just talking the whole way through. And I just think we're not the same. There's no way we can have the same passion for this artist if you've paid £60 to come and chat to your friend and ruin other people's experience. So I think when you're at Pitchblack Playback, you know, everyone has this reverence for the music. No one wants to hear anyone talking or singing or playing on their phones or whatever. And so I think, you know, instantly you're in a room full of like-minded people. Deep listening has definitely been very helpful for me in terms of mental health. I'm someone who has trouble switching off or slowing down or being distracted. So it's really helped me to cultivate space in my week to do all of those things. And unfortunately, I can't experience it in quite the same way at our events that other people do, because I'm always, you know, switched on and stressing about the event a little bit. But I'm getting better at just relaxing into it. And yeah, I really appreciate being able to do this on a regular basis. And I find it also is really helpful as a creative person. It's really helpful for helping to give space for creative thinking as well. I often have very interesting thoughts when I'm in that environment and just switching off. And a lot of people have said similar things to me, that it's really helpful for them to have a space to just slow down and forget about everything and take some time for themselves. We actually had someone at the Brighton, one of the Bens came out to me and said, I'm autistic and I really appreciate having spaces like this where I can just kind of concentrate without distractions. And that was really an incredible thing to hear. And I think we have quite a few neurodivergent people come to our events, and I can understand the attraction. Yeah, I think deep listening will continue to grow, as will other deep and slow experiences. I think we've reached the kind of, hopefully, point of inversion, bell curve, kind of downward bit of the intensity of social media and digital communication and having devices, and people younger and younger realizing what a bad effect it's having on them. And I think things like deep listening, the growth in vinyl again, experiences like this, and more interest in things like meditation and practices like that and yoga, I think it all speaks to a human need just to reduce the overwhelm. And I think that we can help to play a part in continuing to spread that gospel that there is another choice, rather than constantly being on your phone and working 18 hours a day, whatever it is. Just take a minute to breathe, stop, smell the roses, and hear the music. What I would say to people is, some people, they'll see the concept online like you did and they just instantly get it. Other people are skeptical. And to the skeptical people, I'll say, come and give it a try. If you love music and you see an album you love or an artist you're interested in, come and give it a try. If it's not for you, if you don't like it, then fair enough. But I have seen many, many people come and be convinced by the concept who were skeptical before they came. a friend brought them along and they weren't sure, and they've said to me afterwards, yeah, that I'm really impressed, that was a really lovely experience, and I got something new out of the album, and I've never really done this before, this kind of thing. So I know that it can change a lot of people's minds, and it's something that I started as a passion. I'm very passionate about. I'm very excited about how happy it makes people, and I'll continue to do it for as long as I can, and I hope people will come and give it a try. And we have lots of repeat customers, lots of regulars who are a testament to the fact that when you get all the elements right, it can be a really powerful experience.